name is Sophie Jump, and I'm one of the co-founders of the One Step Beyond concept. We're really excited to see that we've got participants from all over the globe to this inaugural Zoom effort, plus the members of the International Wine Clubs Association, so I'd like to welcome them. Over 100 of you attended our inaugural event in March. And since then, technology and innovation is even more important, particularly when dealing with the final consumer. And the pace has accelerated, as we've seen during lockdown, and with many companies saying they've covered about 5 years worth of progress over the past 6 months. So the need to keep ahead and in touch with technology and innovation is more important than ever. We're really grateful to our speakers from March who've all reconvened. Our speakers and our panelists have all reconvened for this follow-up session. And also to our sponsors and partners, which are WSTA, Emetry and Five Forests. We've got an absolute action-packed program, so I'm going to shut up. We will try and make time for questions at the end. So if you have questions, please do pose them using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Richard, would you like to say a few words before we begin?
Absolutely, yeah. So hi, obviously Richard Siddle from the buyer. Just to reiterate what Sophie was saying really about how the last 7 months has just been unbelievable in terms of change. I think I've probably written the equivalent of 2 books worth in terms of content. So just really excited to hear what our consumer and digital and voice and technology experts have got to say. A couple of little housekeeping things. If you want to share any thoughts on social media, if you could use the hashtag #OneStepBeyond. As Sophie said, we're going to be, this is recording, so if you miss anything or want to catch up later, we'll be we'll be splicing and dicing up on the buyer and putting out video extracts. But other than that, it's enjoy the next bit, and back to you, Sophie.
Great. Well, our first speaker is Naji El Arifi, who's Head of Innovation at Wunderman Thompson Commerce, which describes itself as part creative agency, part consultancy, and part technology company. So over to you, Naji.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Right, guys, let me just share my screen. And there we go. Right, everyone see that? Minimize that. There we go. Cool. So I've got about 10 minutes to talk to you all about some of the trends that we've seen in the last couple of months. And if you saw my presentation from March, we kind of looked at a few different areas or bits of research that we did. So in this presentation, I'm going to focus on some new research that we did called Future Shopper. This was done in April. And then I'm also going to look at COVID commerce and the consumer, another piece of research we did in July. So really, we kind of got research from just at the beginning of the COVID experience or lockdown, all the way through to basically the middle of lockdown. And one of the things we wanted to answer, this original presentation is actually 180 slides. So you'll be glad to know you're not getting the full thing. But in that presentation, we kind of discussed whether or not consumer behavior is doing a pivot, so changing to do something new and potentially will go back, or whether or not it's an acceleration. So to give you a little bit of a spoiler, we definitely believe that it's an acceleration. And that's mainly because of all the conversations we're having with our clients, the roadmaps we're putting in place, and what consumers are doing as well. So to begin with, usually we'd go through about 8 of these trends. So if any of you want to see all of these, feel free to message me on Twitter or email me, whatever. Very happy to take you through them all. But in this presentation, we're only going to look at 2. So we're going to look at digital commerce on the rise, and then also what brands and D2C need to do to win when it comes to their experiences. So to begin with, digital commerce on the rise, we kind of do this research every year, and we ask the same questions. So do consumers expect their spend to increase online? And from the research that we did in April, this was coming out at 65% across the entire study, said that they knew that they were going to probably spend more online. Now, this is before any of the stuff around COVID actually started to happen. So people already thought they were going to start spending more. But then what we wanted to do is a follow-up piece of research to look at, well, what were consumers, what are their shopping behaviors pre-COVID, during, and then what do we think it's going to be in the future? And so we asked people, what percentage of your spending is online? So I've broken this down by UK and US. So it's 43% in the UK of spend is online. Then when it comes to actually during lockdown, that shot up to 62%. And then we ask people, well, what do you think it's going to be like when we come out of the COVID experience and there's more of a, say, there's a vaccine or something like that? What do you expect your spend to be? And again, that came out at 51%. So you can see that there's still going to be a hangover of people shopping online more than they were pre-COVID. And one of the things we want to look at as well is how positive people felt. And we found that 43% in the UK have a more positive feeling around online shopping. Now, this is probably because a lot of them may not have used, say, online shopping to do their groceries and were basically forced to do so and found the experience pretty good, or better than, say, queuing in stores. So they ended up with a bit more of a positive feeling around it. Now, again, one of the things we want to focus on is whether or not this behavior is temporary or not, or whether or not people are going to go back to where it was. So again, I've broken this down for the UK. So 66% actually say that their purchasing behaviors are not going to change. So they've changed for good, basically. So every habit they've gotten through lockdown, they're going to pretty much keep. With only 16% saying that they tend to go back to exactly what it was pre-COVID. So you can see that a lot of people are starting to get into habits and routines that they're probably going to stick with. Now, it's not just us saying this. There's a whole load of research out there focusing on this. Ocado have even said that a lot of the shopping is going to be permanent. There's some really interesting quotes from the CEO of Whole Foods around people probably not going back to the way it was when it comes to grocery shopping. So it's not just our research showing this. It looks like everyone's coming to the same conclusion as well. And one of the main reasons for this as well is mainly because 38% of consumers are now actually more comfortable with technology. And the picture I want to draw your attention to is the bottom left one. This is my boss's kids and his mother having a conversation on Zoom. So something that 2 generations never would have done before, but the first time now actually utilizing technology, and the fact that they're using it means they're getting more comfortable with it. So second, we're going to be talking about brands and D2C. And one of the things I kind of show in pretty much every presentation, so you've probably seen this before from me, is about having a really balanced e-commerce strategy. So you want to be able to be selling through marketplaces like Amazon or eBay or Alibaba, selling through retailers, D2C, and then newly is social commerce. And the reason for that, again, was kind of highlighted during lockdown, because if you focus too much on one, you wouldn't be able to spin up another part of the business quickly enough to kind of make that revenue back. So having a really nice balanced strategy means you can kind of pull on different levers as and when things happen. So one of the things we want to look at is what the offerings are that people need to have and where they need to focus. And so we broke down into 3 areas. So giving consumers what they want, giving enough reason to make a more protracted journey. So if you think, if someone's used to shopping on Amazon, they need to have a good reason to come directly to you, for example. And then finally, we'll finish with what Amazon can't do as well. That's another area that's really key. I showed this slide in the last presentation in March, but again, I just want to hammer it home. We asked a lot of basic commerce leaders, so CEOs, CMOs, and CIOs, why their projects failed, their commerce projects failed. And the top reason was 34% said lack of alignment with customer needs, which for me is just painful because I'm a product manager at heart, and that just kills me. Poor logistics, lack of clear objectives, lack of digital knowledge, and move forward too quickly. And the thing is, with all these problems, they can be solved pretty easily by doing customer journey mapping, focus groups, just anything to just get closer to the customer and just talk it through and put a strategy in place beforehand. Even the lack of digital knowledge, that can be learned, that can just be fixed with partnering and things like that. But we've definitely found customer journey mapping a huge positive for a lot of our clients. So what do consumers want in the end? And one of the areas that's really broken down into is delivery, availability, and returns. And so we basically ask people, what would encourage you to purchase at one retailer compared to another? And it's amazing how high delivery comes on all this. So free delivery was first with 61%. Then there's availability, better price, fast delivery, and convenient delivery. So you can see just from those 5 how important the experience around delivery is. And let's break that down even more. We kind of asked, well, what would encourage you to buy directly from a brand? And again, we got, price came up top. I mean, that's pretty much every year that comes up top. But then we've got free delivery, fast delivery, convenient delivery. And you can kind of break all these down into different areas. So if you want to perfect the D2C experience, we can kind of break this down into separate areas. So to put it another way, price, service, content, curation, personalization, and access. If you can perfect these areas, you can really create an experience that is going to make people keep coming back to you and keep wanting to purchase directly from you. So you kind of saw how important delivery was there. So let's break that down just a little bit more. Again, you've probably seen these stats from March, but I just want to again hammer it home. So 2.85 days for online shoppers, that's how long they expect to wait for something. We did research into Gen Alpha, 6 to 9-year-olds, it's 1.9, they're very impatient. But again, digital commerce leaders, the most impatient people around at 1.62. But then we followed up a bit of research later in the year, and 70% of consumers actually expect products to take a little bit longer during lockdown. So there is a bit of a leeway when it comes to lockdown, but we found that as time's gone on, people are now expecting companies to have spun up enough delivery vans and all that kind of stuff to keep delivering the service. And again, my favorite stat here, Gen Alpha, kind of again just showing how important delivery is. So 20% will never buy from somewhere that can't deliver the next day. So that's ages 18 to 24 roughly. So that just shows you how important delivery is to them and how conditioned they've become from using companies like Amazon, who've just made it almost normal to have something delivered the next day. So now let's take a quick look at what consumers would change about the online shopping experience. So 6 things they'd want to change is they want free returns. They want easy returns. They want fast replacements of products, fast delivery. And you can see again how important delivery is around this D2C experience. And finally, what about brands? Well, one of the things we always say is how important service is and how much of that is almost more important than the brand. But we ask people how important is the brand you're buying from, and it's still really important to people. However, there is a but here. The brand is important, but 38% actually said that it's more important to get the product on time than it is to get the brand they prefer. And we think this percentage is probably going to increase in next year's study as well. So in conclusion, I'm like about 20 seconds under, which is pretty good. First thing is, buying online is on the increase, and digital spend really is going to continue to increase, and COVID has just sped that whole experience up. Marketplace and retailers, brands, you really need to focus on service, and that is the key thing here. And finally, focus on the customer experience, delivery especially, and look at availability with a kind of a real good eye on returns as well. And that's basically me. Thank you very much for listening. Like I said, if you want any more information on this, please feel free to reach out. I've got all the reports that we've done. Happy to send those out as well. So thank you very much.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Najee, and congratulations on your timekeeping. I'm going to pass over now to James Poulter, who's the CEO of Vixen Labs, which is Europe's leading strategy consultancy and app development studio for voice assistants and conversational AI.
Thanks so much, Sophie, and thank you all for rejoining us for this conversation that feels like started at the very end of the pre-lockdown period. It was the last thing that I really remember doing before heading into 6 months of being in our home office dealing with the rest of our business like this. So it's lovely to reconnect with all of you. When I was with you back in the start of the year, we really spent some time digging into the depths of what does it mean to, I suppose, look at the new commerce channel, which we think is voice technology and voice commerce. And since that time, we've been really building our understanding of where voice is affecting our consumers, particularly in the drinks industry. And today, what I wanted to do was share with you a piece of research that we just released last week, which is the Voice Commerce Report for 2020 from Vixen Labs, my firm. So I'll go ahead and present this to you, and hopefully we can see that. Let me know if you can't. So what I wanted to share with you is that the very latest stats that we have from what's happening in the world of voice. As I mentioned, Vixen Labs is our strategy consultancy. We're a development studio founded by myself and my colleague Jen, who specialize in working with brands around the world on building voice experiences, including things like voice applications, but increasingly also helping brands be found via voice. So on things like Google Assistant, on Amazon Alexa, Siri, and all of the other voice-enabled platforms. We work with a range of global brands to do that, and are part of the partner networks with the major assistant platforms. And the proposition that I put to us back in March, I think, has become more important than ever before, which is that to summarize from this example from Cal Newport's book, is that as humans, we are not wired to be constantly wired, but that's what we found ourselves having to deal with. And this was what I said before COVID happened. Now I think it's become all the more true, is that as we've spent lots of our time doing exactly this, spending a lot of time separate from one another, we've obviously seen in the headlines and around the world the impact of what our technology consumption has done to us. As those examples we've just seen from Najia's show, there's many places where we've connected more than ever before, and we've managed to bring new generations into that connection. But at the same time, we found ourselves disconnected from one another, and the idea of Zoom fatigue, I'm sure, is something that all of you have had to deal with, or Microsoft Teams fatigue, Slack fatigue. There are many brands of fatigue available. And we are, I think, looking for a more humanized way of doing computing, a more humanized way of connecting with the internet. And what we've seen during the lockdown period is that voice as an interface, people using things like smart speakers in their homes, has risen sharply during that period. In some studies, as much as 40 to 50% increases in people purchasing devices, as well as also using them. And so we wanted to understand, what was it that people are actually doing with those devices? Not just smart speakers, but to understand the range of devices that people are using. What we want to reinforce from these findings is that voice is no longer just about a speaker, but is really an ecosystem. As more of us have obviously turned to using these types of devices in our homes, we've been then trained to be able to use voice everywhere we go, from connected headphones to using our voice via our car and on our phone far more often than previously. And obviously, with more of us wandering around with face masks on and maybe gloves on, depending where you are in the world, using a face unlockable phone has become more difficult. And we certainly don't want to be touching retail displays, screens, and all sorts of other interfaces out in the built environment. And increasingly, we're looking to touch-free, voice-enabled ways of doing that. I mentioned this is not only something we're seeing in the home, out and about, but also in the car. During this lockdown period, we've also seen the release of devices like the Amazon Echo Auto for car-enabled voice assistants in the UK and around the world. And so what we really see now is that voice is truly becoming the new way for consuming the internet. And this is really impacting not just the way in which we access information, but the way in which we shop. So in the in the Vixen Labs Voice Commerce Report, which we issued last week, we found that 40% of UK consumers are making purchases with their voice. Now, this rises and falls across a variety of different platforms and partners, as you would imagine. But when we look at who is making these purchases, we see that actually this cuts right across from people using voice devices in their homes to also on their phone. And it's being led in particular by parents and those in the kind of 25 to 33-year-old user group in particular, who are most likely to make a purchase. And the purchase that they're most likely to make is food delivery. And that cuts across food delivery, both in terms of fast food delivery and quick service restaurants, food to the home, cooked food, but also in online grocery shopping and e-commerce. And so with that being our leading statistic, I think for us as an industry looking at the future of where the drinks and off trade is going to head, we are definitely seeing a big move towards people using voice to make these types of purchases, and it's becoming increasingly important to us. When you look at what people are purchasing, they're looking at food being the leading sector that they are buying from when they're buying with their voice. As we say, 40% of users, particularly who are parents, are most likely to consume with voice. And food delivery is in the top category actually across all age brackets, including those in the 65 plus age bracket, saying that if they're going to make a voice purchase, it will be food. But it's not just about the purchasing, it's also about the whole consumer journey, which we're learning much more about in terms of what it means for voice commerce. We've found from our research that 70% of users are searching for information about specific brands, not just a whole category, but making brand questions and brand choices. And because of that, it becomes increasingly important for all of us that own these brands, whether we're aggregating together multiple products or the owner of an individual brand or product, that we make our brands discoverable via voice platforms. We found that 80% of users are searching for product and service information at least occasionally, and that goes from everything of whether or not something is in stock to what the, in this case we call functionality, but that includes things like ingredients and things like user experience behaviors, as well as also then for our on-trade colleagues, things like store opening and location opening times for things like restaurants, pubs and bars, which obviously during lockdown periods have changed around the world, meaning that often that information is missing or out of date and needs to be corrected. And we're seeing that voice is becoming one of the channels that people are using to check in their car when they're on the way somewhere, when they're at home before they leave, or on their mobile when they're already in transit, whether or not somewhere is open. And we're definitely seeing this behavior shift from just before people leave the house to out when they're out and about. 40% of users using voice via headphones or in the car. And that breaks down slightly differently depending on the platform. But what we're seeing is that people using now things like connected headphones, things like the new Bose headphones with microphones built in for Alexa, people using Apple AirPods to access Siri on the go, or a range of different Google devices, both headphones and also smartwatches. And with now 90% of new car sales in the US coming with some kind of voice activation in the head unit, we're seeing that Android Auto and CarPlay, as well as also some first-party assistants from the likes of Mercedes and BMW, are becoming increasingly popular, and in some cases actually part of the buying decision on which car for people to buy. So we're definitely seeing that trend emerge. But what we definitely have seen be bedded in is voice device usage in the home. People using their smart speakers more than ever before, and increasingly buying more smart speakers for the home, as we've seen particularly over Prime Day in the past couple of weeks. Nearly all of Amazon's discounted Alexa devices selling out and going on back order. So in the UK, at least, we're seeing the difference that Alexa still leads the way to Google Assistant when it comes to smart speakers specifically. But when we look in the balance of people using voice devices on their phone, Google leads the way by a significant headroom, as obviously Android being such a more prevalent operating system than even iOS, and obviously far from the Alexa app usage that you might expect. So when it comes to retail figures in general, we see that 30% of users are making retail purchases with their voice as well. So for those of us that are selling via hypermarkets or via e-commerce, we're definitely seeing that this is a growing sector for people to make retail-based purchases of food and drink. And 49% of users are researching products via voice, particularly looking about price and availability. And I mentioned also that functionality category. So not just what the thing does, but what it contains, usability. And it's no wonder that we've seen a number of wine pairing Alexa skills and Google Assistant actions launched within the past 6 months, going to show that people are looking for what they can have with their drinks and where they can pair those up. So we're seeing that shopping lists are being created. People are taking that next step to add things to basket and make purchases. And particularly for the on-trade, they are looking at things like retail store opening times, and also food and drink location opening times. So this is becoming a really important space for us to be ahead of. The stats and report, if you want to go grab it for yourself, have a load more detail, including a breakdown of where people are using voice devices and some nuances on the different genders and segments, as well as also some barriers to entry as well. But I'll end my little 10 minutes with some takeaways for the drinks industry. The thing that I would want you to hear loud and clear from this is that voice is becoming a primary way that users will access our brands, that they're looking for brand information and product information, and this is helping inform brand choice and availability, which I think when you pair that with all of the findings that you just heard from Naji, I think really go to show that this is a trend that we're heading towards, and it's bedding in, it's not going back the other direction. And one other stat is that we are seeing that voice is happening not just out in the world, but also in the home. And that is something we need to be prepared for. So one thing that I would love you all to remember is that you can go get yourself a copy of the report. If I can work out how to stop my screen from sharing, I'll add that to there. You can email, if you'd like a one-to-one consultation, email via vcr@vixenlabs.co. And you can also go and get yourself a copy of the report support yourselves by logging on to the link that I'm going to drop in the chat for you all now, so you can go and grab that from there. But thanks for the time, and look forward to questions later.
Thank you, James. We'll make sure that everybody has all the details afterwards in terms of links to presentations, recordings, and direct email contacts. So I'm delighted now to introduce our next panelist, who is Paul Marbury, who's pretty well known in this sector. He's the CEO of Emmetry. It's quite early for Paul, so we'll see if we get his usual energy. Emmetry is a consumer data and analytics software platform which helps wine brands so that they can use data to build customer relationships. Thank you, Paul.
Good morning. Good morning. Let's see if I can get a video out here. Oh, they're not letting me do the video. Hello. Good morning.
All right, Jess, Jess, can you sort Paul's video out?
Hello,
Please?
yeah, just having a look, bear with me.
That's all right. I broke the camera again, it sounds like. It's not my first time.
There we go. We can now see you.
Ah, fantastic. Good morning, everyone. Like I said, I must have broken the camera. So, wow, here we are. It's early morning in California. It's been quite a year, as we all know. Let me share my screen here. Can you see my screen? Okay. Fantastic. Okay. What a year. What a year. About 100 years ago, we did One Step Beyond. It was my actual last trip around the world on an airplane. Who knew that we'd be facing a global pandemic that we thought would only last a few months, and looks like it has no end in sight. I think we all can recognize that this industry, our industry, has been hit harder than almost any other industry out there outside of hospitality, restaurants, which are facing an extinction level event. But we too are affected by not only the restaurants, but winery tasting rooms being shut down. So 2/3 of small and medium-sized wineries business is evaporated, causing us to really adjust. We also know very clearly that online sales have boomed everywhere, much of it being passive sales, to be really honest with you. There's a lot of statistics that say this is an acceleration of user behavior. This is a complete shift of user behavior. Regardless, the trend is going to continue, both for wine and grocery sales. If you look at the changes, actually, though, it's been a huge change in the way that wineries are thought. When I came to London, if you would have asked me if wineries were going to go online anytime in a meaningful way, I would have probably said, and I know this sounds crazy, probably not in my lifetime. This is the normal stats of how wineries used to sell prior to COVID. And as you can see, about 78% of that comes to the tasting room. That's both wine club and tasting room. Post-COVID, look at the evaporation on the left, all of that lost restaurant tasting room sales. But within 8 weeks afterwards, the recalibration occurred where people were really focusing on e-commerce and wine club, both consumers coming to it, but wineries as their only means and able to get additional sales and support their businesses. We thought COVID was bad. California, we decided to make it a little bit worse. As you've probably seen, we've had some pretty terrible fires all across the state. These are actual pictures about a month ago, and then again about half a month ago. So you can see the red sky in San Francisco to Carneros to Santa Rosa. It's been a tough year for the wine industry in the United States. And not to mention, the pandemic in the United States is not settling down anytime soon. We're on our third wave, it looks like. What that means for us, I don't think we're going to be out of COVID for quite a while, even with a vaccine. The internal statement we have is, when do you feel comfortable getting in an elevator with 6 strangers again? That's when we'll know we're out of the pandemic. But we don't know what's next. There's the election coming up, possible meteor strike, aliens, zombie apocalypse. All of these are on your bingo cards now, I'm sure, as they are on mine. I'm ready for anything. I think we all are in the wine industry. But the one thing we're most important for is every speaker that spoke at One Step Beyond was very prescient about the fact that digital was necessary and more necessary than ever. But it's hard. It's not easy to get customers from Google trying to find ways to market, whether it's through Vivino or your own website or Facebook, mobile. There's a lot of work to be done. In fact, as we talked about it, the wine industry is not starting from zero, we're starting from negative. So there's a huge deficit of technical resources, knowledge, and such. When COVID hit, about 90 days into the pandemic, I decided to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So I took 6 wineries under my wing for free pro bono to help them do digital transformation. 3 of them did an excellent, amazing job, and 3 of them failed terribly. I'm going to own those mistakes, but there were some common themes that I wanted to share with you among those 3 that failed as an abstraction. The most recognizable across actually all 6 was they didn't have resources or staff that were able to understand how to move into digital. It was a huge jolting experience around building resources, around trying to understand where to start. It was all over. The first winery that really struggled, really rushed into just adding tools, adding an e-commerce site, adding a chat bot. What we saw from that was the tools didn't help solve the problem, they exacerbated the problem. And then at that point, that winery was busy trying to put their fingers in the dam to solve this, to just stay afloat with all the new problems that they caused by adding all these new tools. The second winery, like I said, staffing was still problematic, but they had to go back and rebuild their complete infrastructure. They weren't ready with an e-commerce site that actually operated at scale. They had bad fulfillment. They had no processes to handle when customers had returns or issues, as you saw earlier, especially the understanding of customer journey. And they moved really slow. Everything took months to do. So they're still actually going through their digital transformation now today, mapping their customer journeys 8 months later after starting the thing. The last one also had a staffing problem. It just was continual thematic and felt that digital transformation was a project. They were going to do it, it was going to be done, and they were going to clap their hands and finish it. So they spent much of their time analyzing how they're going to do it over and over again. And the analysis led to paralysis and nothing got done. And then again, speed was an issue. It was slow moving, bureaucratic. They weren't adapting or moving into the category at all fast. And speed is not our friend in the internet, as you know. It moves at light speed more than so. As my personal friend Brian Solis says, this is what we've been talking about for years: digital Darwinism. We're facing that as an industry, this existential crisis, this ability to adapt or die. The good news is I see so many of us leaning into that. I see so many of us finding our way through that and recognizing that the internet is a key facet. In fact, never in my lifetime have I seen the major wine companies put up digital as a pillar of excellence. And every single major wine company has that now, and they're adding resources at an unbelievable rate. It's amazing out there. And this is the way it's going to continue to be. I think that as I said, we're not going to see this end anytime soon. Unfortunately, we're all going into a winter surge. How do we lean into this going into the future? How do we do a better job? It's about taking small bites and resources to move the way forward. I'm a little ahead of time, but I just wanted to say, I hope you guys all join me. If you have questions, I'm always available on social media or email, smoke signal, carrier pigeon, whatever you'd like. But thank you again, Sophie and Richard, for hosting another quick little insights into seeing the way into tomorrow.
Thank you, Paul. Your usual succinct self. Am I going on here? I think you need to stop sharing your screen, Paul.
Okay, I can do that. Fantastic. Thank you for having me.
I'm now going to pass over the microphone to James Harmer, who's Planning and Innovation Strategy Leader at Cambridge Design Partnership, which is a leading technology and product design company.
Thank you so much, Sophie. Can you all hear me? I think you can now. I'm assuming you will, and I'm going to rock on. Great to be back, and really enjoyed the time that we spent together in March. A couple of key pieces of advice. One of them is try not to move your entire family and change jobs during lockdown. It is very ill-advised. It can create a lot of stress. But it can create a lot of excitement too, and that is actually what I have done. So last time I spoke to you, I was at a small packaging innovation agency. I now work as Sophie just mentioned, for Cambridge Design Partnership, relocating to Cambridge, and as well as focusing on packaging and packaging innovation, we've got a huge toolbox and a vast array of innovation tools that we use for a huge number of different clients across multiple sectors. And healthcare and consumer is ultimately a key focus for us. And I hope today that one of the things I'm going to be able to bring to the table and talk to you about is how some of this insight and knowledge that we've got in terms of, yes, packaging, but actually how packaging is connected to a much bigger ecosystem of manufacturing and development, potentially could be really interesting for the wine industry as a whole as we move forward and think about this brave new future that the other speakers have been talking about. So we have a real core capability in FMCG packaging. That's one of the areas that I've been brought in to look after and lead in terms of strategy thinking. And we've done a lot of work across glass bottles and many other sorts of packaging receptacles, as you can well imagine. But the drinks industry is in a particularly interesting place. And I think we've heard already today about some of the fundamental challenges that face us. Packaging is a big challenge for you as well. And so what we are able to do for our clients is help them think about the big trends and the things that are changing the way that consumers are thinking about their use of packaging in the future. And we've heard already today about things like voice control. We've heard about some of the kind of new and exciting technologies that are kind of playing their way into the kind of e-com and delivery and ordering, an automated ordering space. There's lots of things that are going to be integrated into packaging in future, and we'll talk about it, we'll touch on that. We haven't got a lot of time today to go into it in detail, but that's a really big area for us in terms of helping our clients get ready for the future. Sustainability is also a massive area of focus for all of our clients, and we're helping people developing packaging not just in terms of sustainable materials, but thinking really from an innovation strategy perspective. So what needs to happen to be able to put you into a position where you've got a totally joined up strategy for your packaging in future? And you know fundamentally what's going to be needed and required to kind of mitigate some of the challenges and the pitfalls that your competitors are certainly going to be facing into as well. Smart packaging is a term that's being used more and more often. And what's really interesting for us is that that's a really kind of key growth area for CDP as we start to think about the way in which science and technology is going to come alongside and work with a very analog thing, packaging. You know, the thing that you hold in your hand, the thing that ultimately was just there once upon a time to get a product from A to B, all of a sudden has taken on a whole new level of interest. It can be used to protect your brand. It can be used to extend the shelf life of the product. It can be used to actually accentuate and develop a relationship with consumers that we just couldn't have before. And actually what we're seeing with technology and the way that technology is starting to be bedded into packaging, even though it's in its infancy right now across certain sectors who are adopting it and starting to embrace it to actually start to be able to do these things, there's obviously some massive incentives in future. One of them in particular would be the way in which we're able to regulate and think about shipping and supply chains in future, where we can monitor, and the packaging can help us monitor where it is and how things are being shipped. It's also going to help us fight waste. It's also when we think about a sustainable future as well. So without a huge amount of time today to go into these areas in detail, we're going to touch on a few of them, and I'd love to maybe talk to some of you in future about the ways in which we're starting at CDP to be webbing these in to our clients' infrastructure and systems, as well as the packaging itself. And that's because as well as having designers and creatives and strategists and all sorts of people that can help people think about innovative ideas, we've actually got the scientists and we've got the people to bring these things to life. And some of this work takes years, of course, to get to a place where it's actually able to be embedded into something that consumers would use at home. An actual packaging that you've got in your hand. It might take years and years of development when we're starting to think about science and tech, but that time for development in terms of putting technology into things is getting exponentially faster and faster and faster as time moves on. And as we get more agile about understanding the ways in which this technology can be used and used effectively and cost efficiently. So you might remember this slide from when I presented to you last time, and we were sitting on the cusp of something then that we had no idea in terms of how big an impact it would have for us. It's obviously impacted all of our lives in many different ways. And we were talking about whether the world in which we're going to be living in the future will be a utopia or will be a dystopia. And we looked in particular about the way in which artificial intelligence and our relationship with machines and robotics is going to speed up our move toward a utopia or a dystopia. Well, wouldn't you believe it? And it wasn't my fault. We've kind of maybe moved slightly more toward that dystopian situation. And obviously we're looking for good news all the time in the news about how things might change for the positive. But in the meantime, we are trying to tackle the challenges that COVID-19 has thrown up. And packaging has really not escaped the spotlight. In fact, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was loads of concern around the way in which packaging could potentially be spreading the disease, people wiping down their bottles at home, thinking about the way in which people were exchanging or delivering things to our doorstep. Interestingly, there obviously were some brands that have already started to capitalize on this. We've seen a lot of packaging briefs come through for people that want to try and create virgin surfaces, points at which the surface of a pack won't have been touched through the supply chain, or could be touched by the consumer after it's come through supply chain, rather, to make sure that they know that what they're holding ultimately hasn't been touched before. And so it's making clients think about all sorts of different ways in which we can reduce the amount of connection points, and that packaging can reduce the amount of connection points in future. Coke obviously had done that with their smart vending machine, in terms of the way that you would use your mobile phone not to have to touch any buttons whatsoever, but actually have the drink vend for you. So the only thing that you had to touch at the end was the cup. And the way in which we're using wearables and smart technology in future and how that could be linked to packaging could be really interesting in terms of this whole piece around people's attitude to safety, security, and wanting peace of mind. So has COVID-19 stopped us caring about sustainability, given the fact that that's been such a focus? Well, I would say no. I mean, COVID-19 has certainly had many different consequences and has forced a lot of us to start to think about shopping and using plastic and protective items in a way that we may not have been before. But actually, what it's also done is it's kind of united the world in a common purpose. It's forced us to think about our role as caretakers. And if anything, there's a kind of bigger push now toward the fact that we are into this place of having a reality check. You know, this has really forced us to think about how we can be acting on a global basis to do something radical. And actually, the other thing that we have to do on a radical level is think about the way in which we're using resources. And the next generation of consumers, of customers, they're not going to be the same in 10 years. They're looking at brands, at manufacturers, at products, and they're thinking about the way in which they're making the big changes that are necessarily or potentially not. And that's because we've got to move away, as I said before, from this linear economy of take, make, dispose. We've got to move toward a situation that's going to be very different in terms of the way that we use our resources in the future. And that's a key focus for the scientists and the engineers and the people at CDP that are thinking about the products of the future. Seeing is believing, and this is where the consumer in particular is going to be thinking about the way in which they're using plastic packaging. Of course, that's been in the limelight over the last few years. That really has had so much exposure. But actually, the way in which we're starting to use energy and our food and drink and where that comes from is going to be playing a really key role in future as well. I've got the pleasure of interviewing Rebecca Moses in a couple of weeks' time. And Rebecca leads impact strategy at Impossible Food, and she's got some really great insight which she's bringing to bear at the GIF conference. So if you guys have got time to log in and be part of that as well, I really recommend taking some time out to think about the way in which food and drink is changing, and the way in which we're developing and growing and farming those products is changing as well. And so consumers have got new expectations. They want guilt-free shopping experiences. They're using their social media. They're becoming connected. They're understanding the way in which the world works. And as a result, companies, products, services are under far more scrutiny. Consumers are connected. So when we see things like fair trade, we're starting to question on packaging, what does that actually mean? What is fair trade? And in this new world where we're talking about the idea of climate justice, developed versus developing world, who wins, who loses? Well, we play a role in that. And as a result, carbon consciousness is the thing that's really now starting to come to the fore. Yes, plastic is an issue, but actually many times over, plastic is potentially the very best material to reduce our carbon footprint versus moving to inferior materials that have got higher carbon impact. And this balance is now starting to shift. If we think about the way in which Unilever and others are starting to adopt and embrace the idea that carbon labeling in future is going to inform consumers about just what a kind of carbon toll products or shipping products to get to consumers taken. In future, maybe consumers are going to start to question how far their grapes have come from in wine to actually get to them and be something that they can enjoy at home. Is there going to be a guilty pleasure to be had when we're thinking about wine that's come long distance and shipped in bottles? Well, we've got all sorts of technology that's on the horizon, and there's lots of excitement around things like the Earth Shot. The idea that we could actually take carbon out of the atmosphere for our packaging in the future and turn it into materials that could be, turned into bottles is really, really exciting. But frankly, that's an awful long way off. Can we rely on these kind of future technologies to do the work for us? I think where we really need to be thinking about moving toward is circular systems, ways in which we can actually have a much bigger impact, not by just focusing on the packaging alone, but the whole ecosystem around the packaging and how that can be developed in a much more energy efficient, much more resourceful way, and that we're actually reusing material time and time again versus throwing it away. And what I would say today for you guys as a takeaway is really glass has got a carbon conundrum attached to it. We talked about this at the event back in March. And what I would love is for anyone here today that's really starting to think about how they might tackle this issue or think about this issue in the context of their own business, to have a wider conversation around it with CDP, because we're helping people think about the way in which future materials could start to be webbed into their industries in the future and what's going to be needed to actually make these big changes. Because glass is going to get into the spotlight in future when you think about the negatives it has versus other materials. And so we're asking a big question. And what we're saying is that our service at CDP in terms of helping clients and consulting and taking them on this journey is that we need to think about circularity in context. No one's going to be able to make these major changes overnight. And the expense of making these sorts of changes, certainly in terms of knocking down entire manufacturing systems and building new ones, it just isn't going to be tangible. And financially, we're going to be very limited as well over the next few years in terms of what we can do and how quickly we can make these changes. So we need to make smart changes. And so we're asking clients smart questions around what could you do now? How could you start to make circularity work now? Not just in the packaging itself, but as I said, in the whole system around it in terms of how you get your product to market. And so we're doing lots of circular road mapping work. We're looking at the new materials and technologies that are coming on stream, but we're thinking about how we're going to be webbing those in and how you can web those into your systems in the future. But also what's happening in terms of regulation, legislation, what are the other major factors as well as technology that's going to be thinking about the way that we need to change our packaging and our production techniques in future. So COVID may be capturing the headlines, but carbon really is the elephant in the room. So leaving you with these thoughts, really, we want to catalyze the move away from the brown economy to the green economy. But there's big question marks about how we can do that effectively. And there's a huge question mark around how the wine category and the wine industry could do that. We could be on the cusp of a packaging revolution, or we could become followers. But either way, change is still certainly coming. And I'd love to talk to some of you maybe after the webinar about ways in which we could help you do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James. Can you, oh, you are out of your screen share. It looks yet again like the C words are the ones that we all need to watch out for, devastating our society. Anyway, delighted now to introduce you to Kevin Shaw, who is the CEO and founder of Stranger and Stranger, which I'm sure most of you know, which is a packaging design and branding company. Thank you, Kevin.
Hi, let me just get this share screen going. Can you see me? Share screen.
All good, Kevin, we can see you.
You can see it? Good, all right. So yeah, so my name is Kevin Shaw. We, Stranger and Stranger, have 3 studios. We do work all around the world. I'll just do a quick recap because last we spoke. I still have 3 studios, which is amazing. And we're still churning out lots and lots of packs. These are packs that we've done. Packs from everywhere, really interesting funky packs and really expensive $100 to $1,000 bottles of wine, which is incredible. We do a lot of liquor, huge amount of liquor, obviously tons and tons of gin, and then all of the things like cannabis and fine food and perfume. And I am always interested in how all these things cross-pollinate and influence each other. And I think we can all learn from that. Lots of sectors do. Wine is probably the slowest, but let's just give it a go. So last time we spoke, I was talking about this monster, which is an Aussie wine, massive in the US. It started off with augmented reality, augmented imagery, and so all these labels talk, and there's these kind of anti-heroes who kind of give their stories and all this, and it got huge. And we were tasked to update it, bring it forward. And so now the anti-hero is this fella. Well, he's the first anti-hero. And yeah, really interesting for us because it's the first time that we've ever actually stuck somebody's face on a bottle. And a quick word about celebs. There are good ways and bad ways of doing celeb things. Michael Owen IPA is it's just too easy. You can get a really good celeb like this guy, known as well as being drop dead gorgeous. He's smart and he's funny, and his feed, I mean, just follow it. He's hilarious. He's hilarious. And he's doubled the volume of this gin and then sold it to Diageo for $500 million. He bought into the product and he lived it and he did it with authenticity, and he was very, very cool. Lots of people have failed with celebs. Even Farrell couldn't land Kareem or whatever it is. And poor Danny DeVito was a scratch and sniff thing, and Danny DeVito and scratch and sniff should never be in the same sentence. Donnie here, despite being a teetotaler, was big on his vodka at one point. He did 40,000 cases at one point, which is amazing because he's a teetotaler, but then he is, what do you call it, a whore. So, but before you criticize him, if you have one of those bottles, you can get $5 grand for it on the open market, $750 empty. That is just the power of an iconic and very, very rare pack. Loads of celebs are doing wine right now, and it's really interesting. Some of them just kind of put their name on it and get a cut. Some of them kind of live and breathe it, and it kind of makes sense in a way because, you know, we're all staring at our phones now. It's all social. So there's this great opportunity. Back to Snoopy, obviously it went really massively viral and all over the place. He was amazing, and if you get a good one of these, you can kill it. He did it properly. He lived it. He got involved. He donated to the right people. He was at the right time, and he was contracted to do 3 social media posts. He did 68, and this was slated to do like 100,000 cases over the year. It did that and way more just on the release. So it's heading towards being a monster, and he's a star, absolute star. Speaking of bling, we've been doing lots and lots still of really expensive stuff. So there's definitely a divide. The cheap stuff is going on fire. The expensive stuff is still going, whether it be liquor or like really expensive cannabis chocolates or perfumes and rum. This must be the 6th premium run we've done this year. So all these things are rising definitely. Low alcohol. I don't know why. I don't understand it. I'm from the north, but it's still there, and people, especially young people, the stats are saying they're very happy to drink a lot less alcohol. Seltzers are big, huge monsters. We've been doing them all year, and it's transitioned from when lockdown first came, beers started to come in, then it went to seltzers, then it went to seltzers, branded seltzers, and now it's like different spirits in the seltzer. So it's not just kind of industrial alcohol anymore. There's a lot of premiumization of seltzer. The most premium seltzer over here now cannot make enough of the stuff, and they're going to run into really hard times unless they shift towards the end of the year, because there's going to be a massive aluminium shortage. And now beers are starting to throw fruit in and look and act like seltzers. So this has been colossal, and it's going to be colossal still. The reason is it's a numbers game. You can get calories, you can get low calories, you can get low alcohol, and they're easy to drink. But a numbers game everywhere. Where's my wine seltzers? I keep asking. Oh, there it is. So what we've had in wine, the only thing we've seen is kind of this botanical shift. It's not really an innovation in the product. It's more about talking about it, even if it is in a kind of a different bottle. There could be more innovation in wine products, as always. This thing I spoke about last time, I think it had just launched. This has gone crazy. It's whiskey with just bananas thrown in and then pulled out. And so now there's going to be a huge celeb thing with this. And yeah, so that's going to be Monster. This is a Scotch whiskey blended with Irish whiskey. So there's still lots and lots of innovation going on in every sector apart from wine. Sustainability is now a big thing, and I'll echo the things that James just said. This, for the first time in our 26-year history, we are getting briefs that talk about sustainability, even more than that. It's become now a word, and I think maybe it's because the planet's on fire or something. There's definitely a mood towards this. 7 years ago, we tried to do all this, and we did square bottles, which come in smaller packs and you know, a lot more energy efficient. We did a paper bottle, and you know, we got it out there and it got PR, but nobody seemed to be that interested in it. Nowadays, it's everywhere. All the liquor companies are coming out with variations, and everybody wants to talk about it. We did this vodka this year, which is made out of discarded Colombian coffee fruit. So this guy goes to Colombia, where they make all the coffee, all the crap, he collects it up, ferments it, turns it into vodka. But he's got an ethical message, and this is quite important. There's more of this sort of stuff coming through. This is a vodka made from spare supermarket fruit or bananas that aren't straight enough or whatever. They just collect it all, they distill it, and they make it into something. So it's something out of nothing. But you do have to get your sustainability message right. I don't know if anybody's seen this thing. It's Arctic, it's polar, it's water made from the polar ice cap. Sounds great. It comes with a celeb strapped on. He's not, before Jason Bourne chasing me down on this, he's not actually strapped onto the brand. He said he's a big fan of the brand, and he's obviously not written the back label. We have to write a lot of back labels, and so the stories are really, really important, and I always dig in and see if they stack up. Well, it's a beautiful bottle. It's in a nice pack, over packaged really, and it's $80 a bottle, 80 euros a bottle there, sorry. And I don't know what I'm most surprised about there, whether it's the price of the stuff or the fact it's sold out. This is just crazy. It has this great environmental message. It says that they save 100 kilograms of North Pole ice cap with every bottle sold, which sounded amazing. And then I dug in a little bit, and I wondered, how did they get the ice? Well, they get a tanker and they fill it up with diesel fuel, and they crunch through the ice, they get to the polar ice cap, and then they melt it. They just grab a ton of ice and melt it. So the fact that we're saving ice and they're just melting it, I'm calling bullshit on this one. 100 grams sounds 100 kilograms sounds a lot of ice until you realize that the polar ice cap weighs that many. That's a quadrillion, 26.5 quadrillion kilograms, which is that many bottles, that many cases, and that is the area of the polar ice cap. So that many cases, we will be able to save the polar ice cap by stacking it in a pile of cases 129 feet high. That many bottles at that much each would cost 20 quintillion, 20.9 quintillion. And that's the GDP of the entire world. So it would take us 150 million years to pay it all back. So you've got to be careful with your environmental message, because if somebody like me is sitting in a car with too much time on their hands who can do maths, it unravels pretty quickly. There's no need for sustainability to look like hand soap at all. It can be a lot better than that. We're starting to see refill programs, which are really nice. One on the right I like in particular. It's a repurposed still. As a designer, it gives us issues because we have to think about the labels, like reusing bottles with paper labels are going to get tatty real quickly. So the bottles need to be more robust and the packaging needs to be more robust. This distillery collects all the bottles up and repurposes them and just refills them, which I think is great. And you can do this locally. This guy is all over Colorado, but everybody is put to shame by this guy. This is Mr. Strauss. He makes the milk in California. California is not a small place, but he goes around and collects every bottle. I mean, this is it's a 4-pint bottle. We religiously take it back to get our $2 back. And he reuses them 5 times before they melt down the glass and make new bottles. All of the water in this plant is done using reclaimed water that's recleaned and reused multiple times before it goes to irrigate the pastures. They use low sodium cleaners so they don't poison anything. And all the power comes from solar or wind. And he is true zero waste. He's our finance director, has a doctorate in sustainability, and this guy is her god. And let's not forget now the buying experience. We're buying like this now. So make sure your packaging is sharp and make sure your message is really clear. It's never been more important to be able to communicate exactly what you stand for. So work on your elevator pitch. I have been Kevin Shaw. We can all do better.
Thank you, Kevin, very much. I love your energy, particularly as it's so early in the morning for you. And I also
That's coffee for you.
I feel very sorry for the poor sod in your office who had to work out all those trillion bisquillion stats. But anyway, good job. So our next, thank you, Kevin. Our next and final speaker is Simon Mayhew, who's head of online retail insight at the Institution of Grocery Distribution. So over to you, Simon.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me back again. I'm going to be talking about how COVID-19 has impacted the online grocery. Because we're all in totally different places at the moment and things are changing so fast, I just want to remind everyone where we come from. Social distancing meant that we had these enormous queues outside the front of stores, and then panic buying meant that in-store availability was decimated and the shelves were wiped completely clear. Going to the store now for some is a scary, risky place to go to. And when you think that the store used to be a place that used to excite us, it used to entice us, engage us, but with caution markings on the floor and screen guards everywhere and warning signs, it's somewhere we want to get out of as quickly as possible. And that's obviously benefited the online channel. Now, the reasons for using online have fundamentally changed. Online in the old days was all about convenience. It was quick and easy, had really good availability and choice. Now it's all about fear. This chart on the right-hand side shows the reason why shoppers are using online for the first time, and 73% of people are doing it because they're scared about going in a store. Something like 23% of people are doing it because they have to, because someone in their house is vulnerable. And this fear has obviously shifted all these people into the online channel. And what's interesting is a large proportion of them are older. So in the US, 14% of people have started buying groceries online for the first time. In the UK, that's 15%. And on this chart, I want to show you, the age groups of people using online for the first time. And if you check out the right-hand side, you can see that it's 18% of people are aged over 65. That percentage of shoppers aged over 65 has doubled during the pandemic. And that's a real challenge for retailers. They're thinking about what their ranges should look like, what the space should be, and how they can make it easier for these older shoppers to place orders. The other interesting thing is that shoppers are placing bigger orders, and they're more open to influence. And I think this is really interesting for your category. This chart shows the percentage of orders over £76 in 2017 and this year. So in 2017, 28% of orders are over 76 quid. In 2020, that shoots up to 44%. Shoppers are spending longer on a website. They don't want to buy the same stuff week in, week out. And when I talk to retailers, they're telling me that they're clicking on digital advertising that offers them solutions, that offers them some inspiration, and they're adding new stuff. And they're going to great offers sections of websites like they've never done so in the past. But what I want to stress is that the store isn't dead. The most successful businesses are focusing on omnichannel and delivering that seamless online and offline experience. In 2019, if we use the UK as an example, because it's such a mature e-commerce market, online was about 6.2% of total sales. Now, we forecasted in 2022 that it would shoot up to 7%. Now, we've obviously had to reforecast everything based on COVID. And we forecast that in 2022, it will be 8.9% now. And that means that 1 in every £11 will be spent in the online channel. But that leaves an obvious point that 91% of sales will still be going through stores. And I think what's been really interesting during the pandemic is that the omnichannel retailers, those retailers that have stores and supply online, have been gaining share in the online channel. So this chart shows the current UK weekly online order capacity for the top retailers in the UK. Tesco used to deliver 800,000 orders a week. Now it does 1.3 million. So it has increased its order capacity by 63%. It redeployed staff, it rolled out click and collect, it got hold of new vans. Ocado, which is the world's largest pure play grocery retailer, has only been able to increase its order capacity by 12%, 42,000 orders. Ocado had to delist its entire bottled water range just to try and get more orders on its vans. Now, this creates massive problems for the grocery retailers, this shift to online. And you can see in this waterfall chart the additional revenue and costs of the in-store pick model. And that's what most retailers have rolled out. So grocery retailers only make an operating margin of about 4%. They then get an extra 2%, which is through ad revenue, where suppliers pay for banners or prioritization on search. They then get an extra 3% from delivery income, but they start to lose money pretty quickly. They spend about 1% of an order on marketing, so that's first-time customer vouchers. They spend another 1% manning that call center, dishing out vouchers when delivery drivers are late or products are broken or they're not the right product life. And then they've got two enormous costs: picking 7% of an order, delivery 9% of an order. So the reality is these retailers, now that they're selling online, are losing about 9% on every online order. And that's really important because it guides all of our predictions. So let's talk about 5 ways grocery is changing. The first one is they've got to start making more money out of online. Firstly, they can cut costs, and that means you use automation. So we expect to see more micro fulfillment centers that rely on robotic picking to be built within stores. Much greater use of artificial intelligence to improve product forecasting, labor forecasting, van routing, van utilization. There is absolutely loads for them to go after. Second thing they're going to do, they're going to stick up their advertising costs. More people going onto the website means that suppliers are going to have to pay more. And the third thing they do is going to try and make more money out of delivery fees. So if you're not a delivery saver, You just go onto a website and want to book a slot. Well, that price is going to be really reflective of demand. You're going to see Uber style surge pricing in that area. And if you are a delivery saver, well, you're going to see a lot more tiers. If you want a delivery midweek, well, you're going to pay less than someone who wants it anytime. Second thing is this massive investment and focus on delivering a frictionless online and offline experience. They have to get people back into stores. Now, Walmart is probably the leader in this. They did a really cool thing in March where they integrated their grocery app into the main app, so that if you popped into a store, this app would suddenly help you find products. It will help you make payment. They've even launched a brand new store format, which looks like an airport, which is revolved around the app, which makes it really easy for you to use the app and find products in the store. Another part of frictionless shopping is that you invest in click and collect. So more lockers, more robotic click and collect points. Just pop up to a click and collect point, scan the code, and it whizzes out the groceries for you. Low labor costs and really low handover time. Third thing is much faster deliveries, so more same day and even faster in cities. Amazon's going to be a real driver in this. So in the UK, they're rolling out what's called an Amazon ultra fast fresh service. So about 100,000 items delivery in the same day. They also invested $575 million into Deliveroo. It means that takeaway gets added to their ecosystem. They've suddenly got an army of couriers that can fulfill the last mile. So expect to see retailers buddy up with these takeaway aggregators to deepen that integration so that they can offer rapid deliveries and not have to worry about the last mile. The fourth thing is that you're going to see online be used to launch into new routes to market. And this is really interesting. I mean, an obvious opportunity is for retailers to move into wholesale. So in Australia, for example, Woolworths have launched a dedicated B2B platform. You're going to see more retailers move into food service. I have to be really careful of how I pronounce this, but Kroger has launched clustertruck.com. And you're going to see loads more of what's called ghost kitchens within stores. Now, these ghost kitchens could make products for the store itself, for colleagues, for businesses around the local area, and of course, takeaways as well. And then you get the direct to consumer. Loads more manufacturers going for this. Personally, I feel loads of these offers lack differentiation, so they can't actually get lifetime customer value, but you never know unless you try. And then the final bit is about market consolidation. So the OECD published a forecast that the euro area would decline, or GDP would decline by about 10%, that unemployment would go up to about 12%. Businesses are going to go bust. And there will be companies that make the most of that opportunity. A good example of this is Target in the US. They bought the technology and people from a company called Deliv, and it meant that they could improve their same-day delivery proposition so they could compete with Amazon. And then leading on to what we call ecosystem retailers. These are retailers that offer retail, but also offer additional added value services. Alibaba is a great example. They just spent, I think, $3.3 billion buying a retailer in China. Amazon's share price in the last 6 months gone up 56%. If you compare that to Tesco, I think that's gone down 12%. Carrefour's gone down 10%. Amazon at some point could use its record valuation to buy a grocer and quickly scale within that market. And then if you want any more information on the food and consumer goods sector, then please visit IGD Retail Analysis. Please visit IGD Shopper Vista. And thank you for listening to me. Sign up to our free newsletter if you want to stay on top of all this stuff. Follow me on Twitter, connect with me on LinkedIn, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak again. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Simon. Can you go out of your screen share? I think one quick thing, everyone wants to know what brand of coffee you drink, Kevin Shaw. Secondly, I don't think we're going to have time for Q&A, so could I ask the presenters now to take a look at the Q&A space and provide any comments and replies that they can. And now I'm going to pass over to Richard and our panel. Thank you to all the presenters.
Thank you. Yes, well, that was an amazingly whistle stop. I was trying to make notes there, which throttled my fingers. So we're now going to hopefully allow you to actually hear from different people all talking in sort of more of a question time format with our panel for the last 15 minutes. So can I ask all the people who are taking part in the panel if they could just stick their video and their audio. Robert, if you can do that as well.
I can't do my video, but Sophie's got to do it.
All right, well, I'll introduce everybody on our panel. So we have Lucy Old, who's the marketing director from Fraser & Coastic. Hurst, who's a co-founder of craft distiller called Circumstance Distillery. Ely Jaffe, who's the chief brand marketing someone's mic is a bit loud. And obviously Robert Joseph, who wears many hats. He's a wine producer, he's a brand creator, and he's a writer and a communicator. So we've got quite.
And I can't start my video.
Okay. Well, we can hear you,
Who is that speaking at the moment?
It's me, Robert.
Robert, bear with me one moment.
Thank you.
We can hear you. So that's okay. We're a bit tight on time, so what I thought I'd do is actually, if I just ask you all. We've heard there from the experts about what kind of impact they've seen from consumers. Some of you working on the front line, as it were, selling wine and spirits into the perhaps Lucy, if I come to you first. I mean, at Fraser & Coastic, how just some of those things that you heard there from the experts. I mean, in terms of what differences you've seen in your consumers and their behaviour, if you could perhaps pick up on that.
Yeah, and Richard, sorry I'm going to interrupt very quickly. When the panelists aren't speaking, can you all turn your sound off, please? There's too much interference.
Okay, there you go. Sorry.
Yeah, so we've seen, I mean, it's been really interesting listening to all of the speakers. I think online has been obviously, and the growth in online has been such a massive trend that's has been there before COVID, but has definitely accelerated. From consumers, we really wanted to test their mood quite early on in lockdown, because we were very aware of being a brand and just pushing branded messages out there that maybe it wasn't the right time, or that people didn't want to hear them, or what do they really want to hear from us. So we use social media to really talk directly to our consumers and understand what they wanted to hear from us, if they wanted to hear from us. So that was really interesting. I think category, what we've seen is, which hasn't necessarily been picked up on, but we've seen that still wine has outperformed sparkling wine. Both have returned to growing, but still wine has grown at 8% year on year, and sparkling wine has grown at 4% year on year. So there's definitely been a trend to in-home drinking with still wine. And as I mentioned, online sales have just gone through the roof. So we've seen a real change in how consumers are purchasing.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I'll come back to you and ask you a little bit later about how you've actually responded to those. Liam, could I, if you could unmute yourself, if you from your point of view, as a craft distiller,
yes,
you perhaps pick up on in terms of what you've seen in terms of your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen the same thing. We've seen a massive increase in online orders, particularly over the lockdown period, the full lockdown period. Our internet sales jumped by 300%, almost kind of overnight. So we were doing well online, but it was like people have already said, it's been difficult to work out how to engage with people, whether they do want to hear from us. So the way we kind of approached that was to take a step back, and we focused on just being as positive about the whole the whole thing that was going on, the whole pandemic, just trying to be as positive as possible, and that was our kind of message. And part of that, which you may have seen, was doing things like making hand sanitizer and donating loads of hand sanitizer to emergency services. We've been, shouting a bit about mental health in the hospitality industry, because we've been quite badly affected in terms of our sales to the hospitality industry, because a lot of our customers are struggling, and some of them have gone under. So that's been our experience of the pandemic.
Yeah, and do you think that having strong brand connections with your sort of craft-minded consumers has helped with that, in terms of being able to make that connection?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And certainly we found it was quite interesting when we were doing the kind of trying to do positive things, particularly around the hand sanitizer, because I think we were the first distillery in the world to get on and do that and get it out there. And people responded extremely well to that. And we had people coming online and buying random collections of things from our website just purely to support us, which was really lovely. Someone would buy a couple of t-shirts and a bottle opener, go nowhere near the spirits because they didn't actually want any. They just wanted to show kind of support. So yeah, so we did manage to link in with our customers that way.
Good, excellent. Robert, are you there, or are you? I'm trying to see if your picture's working. If not, I'll come to Illy. Illy, go on. You're. I can see you, so I'll. if you unmute yourself, Illy. And in terms of from your looking in,
you?
Yeah, the kind of things that you've been seeing from consumer behaviour and what you think is going to be some of the key consumer changes that are going to be here for the long term. What would you pick up on?
Well, I think back from February when we met, digital was obviously the topic of the conversation, and it was about how you embrace it as part of the mix, and now it is the mix. I mean, I've had to rethink my business model in terms of from creating live experiences to how do you digitize those and in an extended reality kind of way. Until this is over, this is the only way we're going to do it. So, but Zoom is a platform. There's ways to use it. So I've been really exploring how we can get enhance the consumer experience when they're staring at a screen, and as well as writing lots of you. That's what I've been doing. So I've been consuming more wine and sitting at home going a bit zoomed out, really.
And Robert, I mean, you're I know everyone sort of sees you obviously as a writer, but you're producing wine and selling it all over the world. And from a more of an international perspective, what kind of things have you seen in terms of consumer interest and changes in terms of their behaviour?
I think, well, the first thing to say is that it's been very varied from country to country. So in the UK, we sell mostly in the restaurants, so it's been a disaster, but we don't sell that much in the UK. And in Russia, we've been booming. India's been good. The States has not been great. And I think the thing that came out of what we've been hearing in the session earlier, and that is really concerning, I think, to a lot of people, is if you're not a strong brand, if you're not going to be able to pay for the advertising you just heard about from the retailers, if you haven't got the ability to communicate through people like Illy and whatever, it's going to be very, very tough. If you're very small, you may be okay. I think the mid-sized wine company is going to have a very, very hard time. We're about 3.8 million bottles now. So we are at the bottom of being a reasonable size in the States, or at the top of being small. And we need to push up into being bigger to be able to get the effort on the part of the salespeople and in terms of communication. But I think being mid-sized is going to be a very, very tricky place to be in any market from here on. I think the other thing to say, and we heard it earlier, is the consumer journey. I think we all need to be a lot cleverer at understanding all the different ways that people are going to get to where they're going. I've done some work with Polly Hammond, who should have been speaking with us today, who couldn't get to us, for a chateau in Bordeaux, Chateau Martin Gravier, working on various methods of getting, some things work and some things don't, but you've got to understand that no two people are necessarily going to get to the product in the same way. Brilliant.
Lucy, can I come back to you? I mean, obviously you're got some with the Freycinet and the iHeart brand. You got two of the biggest wine brands, well, internationally actually. But I mean, how has that channel management been for you? I mean, have you seen a big switch, obviously, in selling online and digital, and the changes that's had on your team and the customer journey for you?
Yeah, definitely. We had to really flex our marketing plans as soon as lockdown hit, really. We had a lot of in-store activity planned, and obviously a lot of POS was stopped in store right in the heart of lockdown, because all of the POS was targeted at keeping people safe and it wasn't out there for advertising. So we switched a lot of spend and a lot of investment to online, and that is definitely a change that we'll see continue. So our investment percentage has increased that we put towards online. I mean, it's still not as much as offline, and I think that was interesting what Simon picked up of, that still the vast majority of sales are still going to go through kind of bricks and mortar, but it's definitely a high percentage, and we're reflecting that. So that's one way that we've really tweaked our plans.
Yeah, and you also picking up on what Liam was saying, the sort of the more altruistic side of it. You launched the I Heart Superhero, which was what a fantastic idea for the time.
Yeah, I mean, and it was in real response to what was happening and what our consumers wanted, but to try and do it from a real feel-good stance. So we with our Prosecco, we're in a fortunate position where it lends itself very nicely to personalisation. So we changed the name of our Prosecco, which is currently I Heart Prosecco, to I Heart Superheroes, and we gave away 2,500 bottles, but they were all nominated. These giveaways were all nominated for by consumers, and it wasn't just about NHS, which at the point it was all about NHS. So we were like very much, actually there are posties out there who are still delivering our mail every day. There's the Amazon delivery driver, the people who collect the bins, everyone's doing, the retail workers, which obviously is very close to our heart. So we put it out there to consumers that they can nominate whoever their superhero is, and they were then in with a chance of winning that. And it got so much traction and was so popular that we actually then rolled it out into the supermarkets so that it became a limited edition line for a couple of months, which was great. It was really great to be able to respond quickly like that. But it was about speed to market, because obviously it's a kind of current.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely ticked lots of boxes what the guys were talking about earlier in terms of the need for brands to adapt and move quickly with the times. Liam, interestingly, you want to ask Ilya a question, is that right? Am I picking that up? Do you want to?
Well, I did, yeah, because he used the Z word, the Zoom word, and I just wanted to ask him about that, because a lot of and I'm sure it'll be the same with the wine companies, but a lot of the craft distillers have had to move their kind of experiences onto Zoom. So we would do kind of tasting sessions normally in the distillery, do kind of gin lessons and those kind of things, and we've had to move them all online. And we initially found it a little bit awkward, kind of using a platform that was essentially for business meetings for a leisure activity. And we got round it eventually. We were quite lucky because Danny, who is one of the other co-founders, has done quite a bit of TV and stuff. So we treated it like live TV more than a kind of a meeting, and it worked very well. And I was just wondering whether Illy had any kind of advice for us about using platforms like Zoom for things that we used to do in bricks and mortar, and how we can make those work successfully. If that's right, Illy. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Thank you, Liam. Luckily, no. Again, Zoom is a platform, and I guess it's about how creative you are using the platform. It has restrictions. It's one-dimensional. So, and you're never going to be able to recreate, a tasting with a person in a real room where you've got the aromas and stuff. Now, obviously, you can send things out to people, but again, it's about curating your content, and it's about how you produce it, approach it from a production point of view. So the stuff we've been doing is very much looking at it as it's a live production or it's a recorded production. So one of the big things was burgeoning anyway was video. So if you look at YouTube, I mean, people's first stop is look at YouTube. So it's about recording content. Everything on Zoom doesn't have to be live. So it's about how you kind of organize your show. So you look at it as the live element. What can you do in terms of recorded content, and then put it together so it's a bit more edutainment, I guess. So it's very much live.
Yeah, that's something we've not really done, is used recorded content. So that's
Let's have a chat.
Thanks, Illy. Yeah, free advice. Thank you.
I'm aware of our time, actually. We just probably I know we're probably with hindsight probably should have built in a lot more time today, but we've tried to cover a lot. If I just sort of go back to you all with sort of a wrap-up question, really, and if we in a year's time are looking back on what sort of consumer trends assuming we are out of COVID by then, what do you think will be the real things that will still very much part of our business strategies going forward? Robert, if I can start with you. And
I think the biggest thing is read and watch. The whole clean wine thing that just exploded a few weeks ago in the media actually has been around for a while. The celebrity thing's been happening for a while, and people keep coming up to me having just discovered something that actually, if they've been reading what you write in the bio, what we do in Miningers or elsewhere, has been there to read about. And I think that we all need, and listening to Kevin, whose finger is on the pulse, all of the speakers today, we all need to come to these sort of events, read, listen, and do a lot more what if. Somebody in the chat or the questions has said, well, in 3 years, this will all be over. We'll be back to normal. Yes, but there'll be something else. We all need to be far better at plans B, C, and D than we've been in the past.
Lucy, could I ask you in terms of where your crystal ball?
Yeah, I mean, e-commerce is just going to get bigger and bigger, so we all need to be better at that. But more drinking at home, I don't think that's going to go away, actually. So even when, we really hope that all the pubs and restaurants are back to normal, I think there still will be an increase of drinking at home, which hopefully is all good news for all of us. Great,
and Liam, I mean, obviously you're similar branded side of things. Would you echo those kind of thoughts?
Yeah, and the thing I've been surprised about over the pandemic has been that the consumers haven't and producers haven't thrown sustainability out the window and said, let's just concentrate on survival and forget about the sustainability. We've had more requests to recycle our bottles than before. So I think the sustainability thing, the fact that it's become even more important over the pandemic is extremely positive, and that's just going to get bigger.
Brilliant. And finally to you, really, I know you have a really nice term around reset. Do you sort of see ourselves almost like resetting on what we're doing now and going on from here?
Yeah, I guess reset is, what is I don't hate the word new normal, but there is, normality is a changing feast. If you look at geopolitics, nationalism, all those sort of things. Drinking at home, as Lucy said, is massive. And I think from a brand perspective, those brands that get on and enhance that drinking at home experience, because people are looking to recreate the on-trade at home, so they're going to dress up, and that's going to continue because the on-trade in and out as it's going to be is it's not a given. And I think just from a business and a brand perspective, it's all about agile strategy. Gone are the 5-year plans and those terms that you never read anyway. So you're looking at 6 to 12 months plan, ready to move, to shift, and listen to your consumers. You've got to listen to them. It's, at the end of the day, they're the ones that are calling the shots, and they're the people that you've really got to have an ear with. Start those conversations, like I said back in February, whenever it was.
Brilliant. That's excellent. Thanks to all our panel. If I could ask you to all go away on your little videos, and I ask Sophie to come back, and then we can say thank you very much for us all, because actually Illy's point there about having 6-month plans, we're hoping with One Step Beyond to do a similar kind of event. Hopefully we can do it in person at some stage, but we potentially could do another one of these down the line as well. So from my point of view, thank you very much, and over to you, Sophie, to wrap up.
Yeah, no, same thing. We've had brilliant participation. We've had nearly 200 people joining in this chat, and as I said before, from all over the world. So it just shows really we're all sharing the same concerns. I think our speakers and our panelists were brilliant. Thank you all for being so succinct. And on the last note, sorry, this is IWCA housekeeping. I'll see you all with Robert. So could you all log out here and log back into our IWCA sessions, and we'll all keep in touch soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.